Welcome back to another night of the All-Ireland Live series with Benetti Menswear. I'm Shane Stapleton of OurGame, and I'm joined tonight by Toma O'Shea and Oisin McConville to preview a huge All-Ireland final between Mayo and Tyrone. Just a reminder, if you do want to win one of these retro GAA jerseys that you see behind us from orgaretro.com, please do like, subscribe and comment with the hashtag Benetti Menswear to be in with a chance of winning that. Welcome lads. We'll start off with you, Tomas. Mayo against Tyrone. A novel final, we haven't seen this before, and it probably adds a bit of excitement to have that bit of freshness there.
It does, I suppose. You know, I think at the start of the year nobody was expecting Mayo and Tyrone. All the talk was about Kerry, and would Kerry dethrone the Dubs, and there was a great chance for them. And I don't think possibly that anybody would have foresaw that Mayo or that Kerry or Dublin wouldn't be involved. But Mayo and Tyrone today, and deservedly so. Mayo overcame Dublin and fought every part of the way to get over the line, and Tyrone the same with Kerry. So I think the two best teams on form this season are in the final, and all talk, everybody's saying, and I know Oisin is a big fan of Tyrone, but everybody will probably want Mayo to win. But some story for Tyrone from where they came from in Killarney to actually winning Ulster and winning an All-Ireland title. It would be some achievement for Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan. I think, I'm not saying because there's two of us, but at the start of the season, I do think that Tyrone have the raw ingredients. They did have the raw ingredients. I didn't see how they were putting together throughout the season, and they were looking very shaky, but they've come good at the right time. And the Dubs and Kerry were going better earlier on, and they came apart at the wrong time. So two best teams are there, yeah. Yeah,
Oisin, as an Armagh man, are you delighted to see Tyrone there?
It's an absolute horrible situation to be in. I've a bunker built at the house that if Tyrone win it, I'm going into it. Only for 12 months though. But look at, as I was saying after the game on Saturday, I mean, it's begrudging respect for Tyrone and what they've done, because I think, in fairness to them, they've tried to change things up. You know, even just the way they played and the style of play. That didn't go that well for them at times during the year, specifically in Killarney, when they shipped 6 goals. But they didn't blink. They powered on through, and they still have mixed their game up. Maybe not as much as people think they have, but they're there on merit now, as Tomas says. And I think, you know, it just has the makings of an absolutely brilliant final, because whereas I felt, you know, when it was put up to Kerry that they weren't maybe as up for the fight. Now that probably sounds ridiculous in that they only got beat by a point after extra time. But I just think that Mayo have seen it all before as far as what, you know, Tyrone can bring to the party. I think they have a good record against Tyrone, and hopefully, I mean, possibly the thing about the final is that a lot of it's going to be based just purely on what we've seen at the weekend. That was who's going to make the best decisions in the top half of the field, and Tyrone marginally did that at the weekend. Mayo marginally did that against Dublin, specifically in the second half and extra time. So it just has the makings of a brilliant final.
Do you think Tyrone have changed much from the Mickey Hart era? Like, there was that 6 goals conceded down in Killarney, but how much can you read into the league? But are they playing any differently? Because Mickey Hart got slated for years for that.
They're not playing that much differently. I just think there seems to be a renewed energy about them. I think they want to kick it a bit more. They want to be direct into the full forward line. But I think they realise as time has gone on that that's not as possible playing against better teams as it was maybe in the early rounds of the league or at the start of the Ulster Championship. So I think the intent is there, and I think, you know, that's what we've seen maybe most of the year. But as the year has rolled on, there has been a little bit of returning back to type a little bit, and I think, you know, that was the case against Kerry in the semi-final. But they seem very, very comfortable playing that way, and whenever they have to refer back to what they've done before, I think they're comfortable in that way. But I also think they're probably taking a few more chances than they have. A few more chances, and like under Mickey towards the end, they were taking absolutely no chances. It was very formulaic, and it was probably easier to play against. You knew exactly what was coming, whereas now, as I say, they just have that ability to mix it up. and they have the likes of McShane and boys off the bench who, when things start to loosen up a bit, can do a bit of damage.
And ever since you reviewed the game, Tomas, I'm sure you've probably had a lot of blowback, in terms of saying that Kerry weren't ready for what Tyrone were bringing in the game. And Peter Keane has been there for 3 seasons, so he's obviously prepared and he's getting the team ready for something. Like, what do you think he was actually trying to do with the team?
I'm not sure did he. I suppose he was preparing them, but it was difficult enough for the 5 weeks. They prepared for a game that was 3 weeks, supposed to be 3 weeks from their last game. It went to 4, it went to 5, so that difficulty was there. Obviously, Tyrone, we don't know exactly what happened within their camp, but they were, they were in trouble as well in terms of organising and not knowing who they had, what they had, and they were in a similar situation 4 weeks. But my difficulty with the way Kerry played, it wasn't with the way they played. They fought hard, and I think the intent was there. They worked very, very hard. They turned Tyrone over 22, 20, I don't know, was it 25 times? They worked very, very hard. But I do think they fell apart in terms of their attacking play and in terms of their defensive play. And I do think that was the reason that Tyrone overcame them. And when you add up everything and you say, geez, they still only lost by a point, you say the small margins. I mean, the attacking play to be so kind of predictable all day long. I mean, for it just goes to show the class of David Clifford for him to shine. If he didn't shine, Kerry were lost, I think, up front. The answers weren't coming from. It wasn't even that they weren't scoring. It was they weren't even creating the chances. There was no long-range scores being shot. They were trying to run it. They were trying to pummel them, and it wasn't a team you were going to pummel because they were getting confidence as it was going. But I think it was going the other way. It didn't look like they had any defensive shape or being ready for what else were Tyrone going to do. Like if they were defending in numbers. I do think they're trying to change it up with the kicking. Like Tom Sullivan and Jason Foley, everybody was saying they had particularly good games in that first half, and they did. But I thought the quality of ball going in, they were trying to kick it. I think if Tyrone can work on that and actually, if it comes off for them a little bit better, do it 3, 4, 5 times a half, you have other defences then thinking. But I do think that Kerry struggled with their runners, and it has always been Tyrone's strength. They haven't been as strong this year with it. I didn't see that performance coming, to be quite honest with you, but I think Kerry fed into their barrow. I think David Moran did solidly enough at midfield. There was 4 or 5 very good performances from a Kerry point of view, but you're just lack of I don't know what you'd call it, know-how up front to work it around and to be patient in your handling. I've never seen a Kerry team turned over as many times as the lads were the last day. And it's very hard because I know Oisin says they were outworked. I think the intent was there. I think they were ready for game, they were ready for war, but they weren't. They fed into Tyrone's barrow. That was what Tyrone were going to throw at them, and they just walked into it. And you're saying, Jesus, carrying ball into tackle. And if one of them slows you down, 2 more in straight away and gone, back down the field, and just weren't ready for. Every time there was a turnover, there was 5 or 6 other Tyrone heads tuned in, going with him. And I don't think Kerry were ready for that at all.
Were they ready for the fact that Tyrone were going to allow them to win every single kick out? And then Kerry had to try and do something with the ball. And I look at the team, and outside of Gavin White, I'm not sure who else is dangerous carrying the ball. And obviously, they're further up the field. But I couldn't see that many people breaking the line, and then they were in isolation when they did.
I suppose Tom Sullivan and Brian Begley had been going forward earlier in the championship, and Begley got a goal against Cork, but the two of them, Tom Sullivan and Tom, I know Tom got a point in the second half, but Gavin White was the only threat going forward. And I remember last year when they were caught by Cork, before it was that last league game in Tralee where they played Donegal, and Donegal brought down a very weak team, and you could see Gavin White bombing and you could see Tom Sullivan bombing. They didn't do it against Cork, and that was part of a lot of reasons they didn't win down there. But I do think that Tom Sullivan was held back in terms of marking his men behind. But the stats, like, if you won all your own kickouts, you won 8 of Tyrone kickouts, you get 25 turnovers, you have 34 shots at goal, and you were given that before the game, you said that's what you're going to have. You'd say, whoa, brilliant, let's go. And you lose the game. And you look at turnovers, and I don't know what it was, 2-9. So, look, I hate fellas throwing up stats, but it is, like, that's what's there. And it came from the turnovers and their inability to deal with the counter-attack. And you could be talking all day about it, but that's what happened. Now, Mayo are good at dealing with a counter-attack. Well, they're better than Kerry at dealing with it. They don't fear, say, that kind of a blanket defence. They're used to it. I think Kerry have never, I don't think in the last whatever amount of years, I don't think they've ever actually, yes, we've cracked that. You know the way Dublin can say, we've cracked this type of football and we don't fear it, and you get inside the Tyrone heads because Tyrone know as well that they have you. I don't think Kerry can ever say that, but I don't think Mayo would carry that baggage. I don't think.
No, I don't think anything sort of phases Mayo at this stage. But the one worry I would have for Mayo going into the game is that 35 minutes against Galway, first 35 minutes was poor. First 35 minutes against Dublin was poor. Just think, you know, if Tyrone were to get that lead on you, I just think they might have the ability to shut the game up. Now, Mayo are an unbelievable force when they're driving forward and they're getting at you, and they turn those two games around from positions that you didn't think they were going to do that. But the first 35 minutes of the game will be worrying, and how they weren't getting players ahead of the ball. Against Galway, it took McLaughlin to come on the left-hand side in under Cusack stand time after time. He wasn't getting the ball, but he was making that run forward. He's taking two players out of the equation, and that was giving Mayo the opportunities to get scores from 35 and 40 yards. He's obviously not going to be playing, but they still have plenty of energy all over the pitch. Loftus and Ruan are very important players for them in the final for obvious reasons, but specifically for getting forward and getting scores. And it just makes for a brilliant game. But when you think about Tyrone and you think about Mayo, you just think about them prospering when the odds are completely against them. And the fact that everybody else in the world will want Mayo to win this, that will suit Tyrone absolutely down to the ground. They had a cause the last day, and that might be their cause this time around.
They always have a cause,
yeah.
Don't they?
Final question. Just a final question on Kerry before we just stick with the finalists. Is it possible that maybe they're just not quite good enough?
Yeah. It is like it, because I do think possibly there were fellas playing the last day and you're saying, whoa, is there better there? And you don't want to go down the name and naming names, but you compare some of the players playing there with the top 3 or 4 teams, and there's the two teams in the final, they have pace and power and aggression in buckets. The Mayo defenders, their midfielders, their half forwards, and the same. I think Kerry are shy 3 or 4 players still. But I mean, we're not experts because 2 or 3 months ago we were saying, whoa, they have it clicked, they have it clocked, they have everything, they have the right mix here, they're going right. And then you're saying, are Galway that poor, or Roscommon that poor, that you're not getting it clear, or Tyrone that poor below in Killarney? And then you see what they did against Dublin in the second half and you say, yeah. But then you're looking at all those teams and you're saying, Christ, where were they at? Because
Are Kerry better playing the way they played with the personnel they played at the weekend, or are they better going back and thinking about what he tried to do last year? He tried to do it in the Monaghan game up in Enniskeane, and he tried to do it against Cork, playing 2 unorthodox wing forwards in those positions, because they looked as uncomfortable doing that as they did almost last week.
I think the game plan that works best for them is not the best game plan to carry in against the likes of a Tyrone, and I think they're less adaptable than other teams at doing it, in terms of, right, Tyrone, you could say that Mayo would probably go at them a little bit more up front, and that Dublin would be, and I'd give Kerry a very good chance of beating both just because of the way they set up. But then they've never learned or never had a know-how, and I don't know, is it the fact we'll beat them this kind of a way, and I don't know, is it you have to look at the way they're going to have to be more adaptable at the way they play in the story. And there's been a lot of talk this week about not having dogs or not having tough men, and Mike McCarthy wasn't a dog. He was a dog in terms of he was a tight marker, but he wasn't dirty. He wasn't filthy. No. I don't know, you might be able to, Mark wasn't. Tom Sullivan maybe. Yeah, he could be dirty, but I don't think they were the hard men. They were good at tight marking. And I think Tom Sullivan has been sacrificed as a tight marker, when in fact I would believe that his going forward in the modern game isn't used as often against the top teams.
Stoppers. Would that be a better way of putting it? They probably don't have enough stoppers. Look at the stoppers on the other end of the field. McNamee, McKiernan, Hampsey, and they used Myler obviously at the weekend. what did they do to Kerry going forward? The full back line got a point apiece, and Mayo, I don't know how many assists he had during the game, because I know that's something we don't really account for, but certainly his runs forward were really damaging, and his job was to stop Paddy Clifford. But not only did he stop him, but he's able to add a little bit to him. So the likes of Toma maybe need to learn to be a stopper, but also maybe get ahead of the ball, because Tomas is right in that, you know, not enough players getting ahead of the ball, and if there's nobody getting ahead of the ball, there's nobody pulling defenders out of the way to give the likes of Clifford and O'Shea and Geaney a more simple opportunity. To think how hard Kerry at times, apart from Clifford, had to work to get a score. Do you know what I mean? So
there's no players inside in the middle. If you look at, I was looking at it there again when I went home. I watched it again, and it was people were saying there were Kerry players, like, do you know the way you have to work it around? There were Kerry players there. Just some players decided to go down the middle into traffic. But then if you were looking at it, you were saying, do you know the way the Dubs play it, and they have one or two in the D, and they get in there for a second or two, and if it isn't happening, they get out of it again, and they keep ghosting around. But they keep their men engaged, and they keep their men running, they're creating space. And that's what I think, that it just wasn't there, like.
When you look at the Mayo team and you see the amount of players that can threaten from deep, and I'm wondering, will Tyrone give up the kick out like they did the last day? But do you really want to give Paddy Durkin the ball, Lee Keegan, and let him run at you? Owen McLaughlin, we don't know if he's going to be right. Oisin Mullen, the same. Can they do the same against Mayo as they did against Kerry?
They could do, but they could also turn it on its head, because they might fancy trying to rattle Henley a bit. And they may even mix that up. The one thing that surprised me about Tyrone last week was that they didn't even push up on the free kicks, and that's a perfect opportunity to get yourself set and push up. You might get 6, 7, 8 attempts to do that during the game, and they didn't take any of those up. So it was very, very concerted, and they knew exactly what was happening. They felt as if it was working, and they stuck to that. They may have to change that up. But when Tomas is talking about Kerry's inability to mix it up and to change things from one game to the next, Tyrone have that ability. Tyrone have played 3-4 different ways already this season. They played with an out-and-out sweeper against Donegal, a sweeper basically who covered the full back line, Frank Burns. The next day they didn't have Frank Burns, and they pushed up a little bit more on Monaghan. Again, sat off. Look at the press they had on Beggin's kickouts as well. At the weekend then they set off. So that's 4 different little nuances that they've already introduced to the game this year. Ally that with the fact that they're kicking the ball a bit more. So they're pretty fluent in what they're at and what they can do. Whereas, you know, as I said, I don't know why we're still talking. Why are we still talking about Kerry? But just how adaptable Kerry were, but Tyrone and Mayo are definitely more adaptable, because they've had to be.
Yeah, there's been lots of talk over the years about Tyrone, that they might target players in certain games, whether that's physically, verbals, or whatever. Do you see Tyrone going after certain Mayo players here, and maybe who?
Well, the big ones for me are Mayo will probably pick up Paddy Durkin, Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, and probably Aidan O'Shea. I'm pretty sure that Kennedy will end up wherever O'Shea is, because he's got the physicality. He's a huge man. But other than that, I think that they'll be more interested in how they can impose the game on them. I think for me, the likes of McCurry could prosper in a game like this. You know, he has the skills, he has all the ability. He probably feels if he didn't probably do himself justice at the weekend. So probably the likes of McCurry could do serious damage.
Do you see Tyrone trying to get under Mayo's skin? Like, Mayo's seen all this before, surely.
They have, like, but I suppose they will. They'll look for every advantage, and they'll target players. I think, like, the biggest difference with teams now is they don't bring you. The way we were back in our day, we played a certain way and we didn't change our style. And I think the way teams will play, and what Oisin said there about Tyrone changing it 3 or 4 times, they will, and they'll target specific players. Like, they did a good enough job on Seanie O'Shea the last day. They did an unbelievable job on Paddy Clifford. Even though he did bully his way in towards the game, he kept trying, got a couple of scores at the end, but Myler was outstanding. So they have those players on both sides. To be fair to Mayo, they have the players as well to do it. I think it's just going to be like Aidan O'Shea will be a very interesting prospect, because Aidan O'Shea was taken off against the Dubs, right? And I would think Horan is a clever enough guy. He will find a way of trying to get him. Now, they've struggled the last couple of years. What is his best role? I think he suffers as a result. I don't know, is it inside, outside? I would argue even against Dublin. They had him inside a full forward, but they didn't put ball in. You were looking at it from us and you were saying, she's put 1 or 2 balls. He was making actual runs and he caused that problems before that in the championship, but they didn't put it in. I think they have to get him. Like if a team is doing homework, they'll say, right, Aidan O'Shea wasn't great, so they'll focus on the strengths. But it'd be a mistake by Tyrone not to focus on Aidan O'Shea, because he has been so valuable to them. But Mayo, stop this stuff of bringing him in and out. And I know he has an effect, but I still think that he could have a huge effect if you gave him a specific role and say, right, this is it. You're going to go here and stick at it. I don't know. You see, what position, if you're asked what position is Aidan O'Shea, is he a centre forward, is he a full forward, or is he a midfielder? Do you know the way you can say Keegan's a half back, he goes into the full back line sometimes. Aidan O'Shea's position is, I don't know what.
Just depends, I think, sometimes on the mobility of the midfield, and if he's kept fit for that. I agree with Toma.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't think the full forward thing was a disaster. I think he should have had 2 very, very simple scores.
Was he spooked? You know, up against the hill and he 2 bad wides.
Yeah, but also if you remember the start of the second half, he marked one that he should have played on from, and he played on from one that he should have marked. And it's even just those little decisions. There's 4 opportunities for 4 very, very simple scores. And that would have been 4 points. And we're talking about him in a completely different way then, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't be averse to seeing him in the full forward line from time to time as well.
But it could happen, a player can get spooked a little bit. I mean, he was taken off just after he tried a simple hand pass and he gave it away to one of the Dublin players. I can't remember who it was. But like, what will his confidence be like coming into a final? Because, you know, sometimes a player gets dropped and then they like come on with a bit of fire in their belly. But then like, he knows now, I played poor the last day, might I be taken off again? But he's an experienced man at the same time.
I think he is an experienced man and he has been tough. He's like, the level of abuse thrown at him down the years, I think Mayo will sniff here and they'll have a confidence and a belief. I think possibly, I won't say that they've never believed they can win it, but there's an unbelievable opportunity for them here. I think James Horan took him off, but I think that opportunity of actually bringing him on, and you saw pictures afterwards, normally a player who's taken off and everybody was making a big deal about the fact that Aidan O'Shea just walked past Horan, that there was no look, there was no shake hands or whatever, and yet they were laughing and joking after. I have great time for Horan as a manager. I just think he has it. I never see him roaring. Like McLaughlin, when he got that hit, all right, yeah, he was animated, but you never see him animated. You wonder, where does the fire come from? It's within the group, and they always show up to games. Mayo always show up. They might not always be good enough, but they will show up, and you're guaranteed of that, and you're pretty guaranteed of Tyrone doing the same. So Aidan O'Shea will have, if Mayo are to win, Aidan O'Shea will have to have an impact in the game, and that's where that impact is. Geez, our guess is as good as anybody's.
Yeah, even his attitude seemed right when he was taken off. You could imagine a lad taking home, because you could see him in talking to his brother Connor, who had come on at one stage. Tommy Conroy, I think, at the half time of extra time as well. Like, that is a good sign, surely.
No, it definitely is a good sign. And look at Aidan O'Shea. He's been around a lot of corners. He's had so many disappointments. He knew rightly his performance wasn't where it should have been at. Very accepting. A big call from James Horan. Very accepting of the fact that that it wasn't good enough, and obviously was going to try and impart whatever experience you had on it. And that's the vibes you have to have. Even if it's killing you inside, you have to outwardly show those younger players a lot of love and a lot of. You have to impart as much knowledge as you can that you've built up, and I personally tried to do that with young players. I don't know if any of them actually listen, but you still have to try and do that, and you have to try and get as much out of it as you can and offer as much to the team as you can, whether that be from the sideline or from the middle of the field.
Yeah, trying to get scores.
Just be interesting to see how animated Tomas is in his new role now.
But I'm not the manager, so I don't know.
So obviously putting the ball between the posts or in the net's the big thing here. Ryan O'Donoghue, against the Tyrone team that was happy enough to give away plenty of fouls, there's going to be pressure on him.
There is, but like that hasn't really bothered him so far. I don't think it will be. It will bother him. He's 22 years of age. He doesn't seem to have he doesn't have any baggage. And you know what about Conroy and O'Donoghue? They've already played in an All-Ireland final as well. Definitely will help them. I know it was behind closed doors, but definitely will have helped them. They've gained a huge amount of experience in what has been a fairly short inter-county career so far. So I don't think any of that will faze him, and I think he seems to be nailing absolutely everything. But also, see from play, he's the one player on that Mayo team who's willing to try things. He tried a little ball in over the top for, I think it might have been Paddy Durkin in the semi-final, and it didn't come off. What did he do the next ball he got? Tried an outside of the boot, right across the far side of the field, and it come off. And he just seems like a player who's playing with confidence, and he doesn't seem as if when he comes off the field, James Horan is saying to him, look, don't be trying that again. He's probably telling him, you keep going, you keep trying things. And if you have a player like that, you have to give them their head.
Kerry won an All-Ireland in 14, even after Gooch had done his cruciate, so you're thinking the star man, the focal of the attack, and the same again with Cillian O'Connor. Did you think Mayo were out of contention once he got injured?
Yeah, but the further they got, like Cillian O'Connor against the bigger teams, they seem to have better men to pin him down. No, he had a great first half in the All-Ireland last year, and he had a great year last year, and he was always going to be lost. I thought he'd be felt more from the dead balls. And you know what, it might still come down to it in the final where they might miss one or two. But I think in the semi-final, players or people would always ask you, how come you'd fear? It's not that you'd fear them, but you'd be very wary of Mayo every single time, because they will always create chances. And if they convert on any given day, they odds on, have to have a purple day. In the second half against Dublin, there was points going over from every angle. And I think that's what dragged them back into the game. If they have a game like that, you always have to be wary of it. I think Donoghue and Conroy, the work rate he does off the ball is phenomenal. But I think Mayo are a team that run at you, that have such energy, they will create scores. And I think, obviously, if you score more than the other team, you're going to win in All-Ireland. But if they take most of those chances, they're in with a huge shout with Tyrone. But Tyrone are going to have their homework done. They're going to have another tweak with it in terms of the way Mayo play. Mayo are better running the ball than Kerry are. Mayo are better at defending the ball than Kerry are. So Tyrone are going to have to mix it up again, because what they had the last day against Kerry won't be good enough, because Kerry simply weren't good enough in the areas that they should have been.
And still, Tyrone coughed up, I think, 4 goal scoring chances in that game. Would you be expecting Mayo to do something similar?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you see, I think if you look at it and break it down, both teams are evenly enough matched. Like, people are saying, look at Tyrone, what they've coughed up throughout the season, and look how good Mayo were. And people have written off both Tyrone and Mayo already, yet they're still there. And like, there's nothing we can say that they're going to cough up more chances. They probably will. And it always comes down. Like we spoke about Kerry not losing by a point. I think Tyrone and Mayo are vulnerable at the back because they're trying to commit more bodies up front, especially Tyrone. So there's no way that suddenly in one game against Kerry, the Tyrone are suddenly. We saw what Donegal created against them. We saw what Cavan, like they've all created goal chances against them. Kerry didn't create open goal chances against them. And I think that was the biggest difference with that defence that we saw in the last game against Tyrone. Are they completely sorted now? I don't know. Can Mayo expose them? I don't know. I thought I was good at predictions, like semi-finals and finals. Terrible.
Very poor.
You were poor as well, to be fair.
Where do you think that Tyrone can get joy here? Now, we talked just before we started recording. A couple of the key men, Matty Donnelly, thought he was brilliant in the second half against Donegal. Thought he was pretty quiet in the semi-final. Conor McKenna scored 2-1 from play, yet, you know, outside of those scores, and obviously that's a huge thing, but like he scored 2 goals from maybe 8 yards out. He kind of struggled in the game. He was turned over a lot. I mean, who do you see as the key man here for Tyrone?
I think McCurry's the key man. I think unless McCurry, you know, gets 7 or 8 points against Mayo, I can't see Tyrone win the game. I think there's the role that Matty Donnelly played the last day. He looked a lot more comfortable when he came out. Whereas, as you say, brilliant second half against Donegal, very good in the Ulster final, man of the match. And I thought when he came out the field the last day, it looked a bit better. But the days of Matty Donnelly out around the middle of the field, for me, are done and dusted. That's the way I feel about it. and I felt that he had created a great role for himself in the full forward line. Maybe the weekend's game just maybe didn't allow that in the same way as the previous games had, but I imagine that that's going to be the focus again, because there's a lot come off him in those 2 games when they really needed it. But McCurry needs a foil. Had a massive argument about Mickey Hart and winning your own ball. But McCurry is capable now of winning his own ball, okay? But he shouldn't have to all the time. He should be able to come off the shoulder. You see the influence that Mark Bradley had in that game. Mark Bradley didn't get on a huge amount of ball, kicked 2 good scores, but his movement and dragging players from left to right, was very good against Monaghan, because they're another set defence, a little bit similar to the way Mayo will match up. But I just think that it's a lot of pressure, but I think McCurry needs to be kicking 7 or 8 points for it in order for Tyrone to win it.
Would you be starting Cathal McShane at this point? I mean, at times he looks like he has a score in him, and then other times he looks like the body isn't fully right yet.
Yeah, it depends how many out and out forwards can they afford to have in the pitch. You have the McGearys who are going to drop back, the Sluddens who are going to drop back, the Milers who are going to drop back. I know McGeary is picked number 6 or whatever he is, but he does move. They have so many players that work the two between the 21 and the 21, and they have better players. Mayo are possibly the best team to match them in that. I don't know, you've out and out forwards. Matty Donnelly, was quiet, and I thought he had turned the corner because he had put in 2 or 3 very good games, and then the last day he was quiet. I think, I'll go back to it, I think that McCurry will get into the game if you kick it into him. Like any game that he played very well this year was based on the kicking into him. Now, Mayo don't normally, they might here play a sweeper or drop somebody back, but it was the heat Kerry were putting on. Tyrone kicks into them. I think that if it's a running game purely, McCurry suffers as a result, unless he comes on the loop and he's brought into the game. But they have so many people running. So if Tyrone actually kicked the ball, then Donnelly. And if Donnelly's the man to win it, they need to get themselves in a position where they're kicking into the right zones. Because it was straight down the line. It's very hard for a defender. Tom Sullivan and Jason Foley, everybody's saying they were brilliant, and I was saying, yeah, they were good, but the ball coming in, the actual type of ball that was coming in, into the corners that they were coming in, and it was under pressure. You always say to a guy, can you pressure, give the defender a 60-40 chance, give him that, and that's what Kerry were doing to Tyrone. They were forcing that kick. I do think if Tyrone are to win, they'll have to. I think Mayo will defend the running game better than Kerry will, so I don't think Tyrone are going to get as much joy out of it. Therefore, I think Tyrone will have to get joy out of a kicking game to win this.
Is there any concern that Mayo have already played their All-Ireland final by beating Dublin?
Oh, geez, if they don't realise at this stage that they... Yeah, I think there was a lot of people talking about the fact that they celebrated, and everybody saying they should have had him off the pitch and all that. But again, look, you'll have to... I don't know what goes on inside the dressing room, but you get inside players' heads. I know they had their press night before they even knew who was getting to the final.
Home.
So I do think you'd have to give Horn, it's all the same thing. If they lose, they'll say, they celebrated too much and all that. I don't think that's an issue. I do think that Mayo are around long enough. They have enough of the McLaughlins, the O'Sheas, the Keegans around to know what the story is and to appreciate the fact that beating Dublin counts for nothing unless you actually win the next game. And
is it tough then for Tyrone? We've been talking about monkeys off the back. They hadn't beaten Kerry, Mayo or Dublin since 2008.
Yeah, again, they'll need a cause. They have one. I'm sure I'll help in that regard over the next couple of weeks by writing them off. But yeah, they'll have a cause, and I think once they have that, they don't seem to have any problems.
I think the cause is simple. The whole bloody country wants Mayo to win.
Absolutely.
So it's very easy for them to build themselves up. And I even looked at a newspaper this morning. There was some article saying why Tyrone are hated, and I'm saying, stop, man, don't be giving them, something to latch
extra
on
fuel.
To. Yeah.
Do you think Tyrone are that good? Are they good enough to win this game? I mean, just footballer for footballer.
They're absolutely good enough to win the game. Well, that's the thing. Let's match them up with Kerry, or let's match them up with Mayo in the final. Pound for pound, I'll probably take Mayo in 9, maybe 10 positions. but that's not what Tyrone are about. Have never been about that. It's the sum of the parts, getting the absolute most out of. Like, look at Myler, McGeary, Sludden, Hart, in that middle sector. They can pop up anywhere in there. Doesn't really matter. They're all moving parts, and it doesn't really matter. Collectively, that's what makes Tyrone who they are, not individually. Collectively, I mean, they've had superstars in the past. They've had O'Neill, they've had Muggsy, they've had Canavan. You could arguably say that they don't have anybody of that ilk anymore, but the collective thing has got them to where they are, and will continue to get them places. And even if they lose an All-Ireland final, they'll be back next year. And if they win one, they'll still be back, because that's the way they're operating, and they're just operating at a high level. We were talking earlier about the setups in different counties. Setups top class in Tyrone. They have everything there. They have a base. They just have everything, and they're on the side of a mountain, and nobody else goes up there near them, and they just get on with what they get on with. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be nobody stuck up a tree in Gavahi, because you couldn't stick us to
Trees don't grow there.
Like 03, 05, 08, that whole era, when you go out into the fields, is it something you can prepare for? Like, can Mayo prepare for what's coming? Because it looked like there was elements of that against Kerry.
Well, you could give some excuse in 03, but you couldn't in 05 and 08. We knew what was coming down the line. But whatever it is with Tyrone, they have this just ability. You can break down every single game that they play all year, and then you're looking at them coming at you, and you, after the game, when you've lost, you say, Jesus, they actually hit us with a freaking absolute walloper there that they haven't played all year. And that was their great ability, to be able to rise and call a chip on your shoulder, call it whatever. They were able to rise, and I think they use it brilliantly. They're brilliant at that. And if Mayo can counter that, and Mayo have enough chips on their own shoulder to be able to build their own psychological head in a way that they have to go. I think whatever you say about Kerry, I'm not sure about it, but I'm not sure that Kerry team that played last week understood that psychological side of it coming in against this Tyrone team. And I think everything in the past was the past. But they use, with Dooher and everybody that was involved there, they still use the same kind of game plan in terms of don't allow them to breathe and see what it is. But I don't think Mayo have that baggage with Tyrone. I honestly don't. I think they're always ready for it. They don't fear that kind of a style of football either. So that's what makes this game intriguing. Like, we're all experts after the game, but before the game, I don't think Mayo fear anything in terms of what Tyrone will throw at them. It doesn't mean that Tyrone can't beat them. Of course they can. But I think a lot of it leans towards Mayo's approach. I think I'd give Mayo a very good chance of winning. I would. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards Mayo. But that doesn't mean if Tyrone win, does that surprise me? No, absolutely not.
But I think if you're looking to how to set up against them or how to prepare for them, you prepare for the absolute depths, and then you double that, and that gets you close to where you're going to have to go to in order to win the game.
They're horrible on the field.
They beat them. They beat that great team, and we never did. It's the one curveball like we thrown at us all the time, and you're always asked, how could you never get over the line? And we fully believed every time we played them that we were going to get over the line with them, but there was just this small little thing, and no matter what excuse, you can't give an excuse because we never beat them. You can't explain it, whereas your fellas did. And it's just there's a mental side of it. Small little things, you can draw it all out. But is there a mental thing? I can't honestly say that we had a mental hang-up going up against Tyrone, because every time we go in, I thought we were going to beat them every time. Not in a cocky way, but I thought we were good enough to beat them, and we had everything to beat them, but it just didn't happen on the day. And look, c'est la vie.
Right, well, thanks very much. My thanks to Oisin and Tomas there. That's it from another great show on the All-Ireland Series, live here with Benetti Menswear and brought to you by OurGame. If you want to win one of these orgaretro.com jerseys, please do like, subscribe and comment underneath using the hashtag Benetti Menswear. Thank you.